want to make sure that we also allow Ani to make her important presentation and also have some time, I hope, for questions and answers. Ani, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Hind. So I'm going to speak from the context of Imams for She, the initiative that we had launched earlier this year at CSW in March, here actually in this very same room. So since that launch, I'm really happy that we actually have the first Imams for She in the room today, Imam Shamsi. He's the local Imam here from Long Island, is that right? Yeah. Queens. Yeah, Queens, all right. So, so since the initiative of Imams for She is basically to empower imams who advocate for gender parity. We know that there are a lot of hate imams, and frankly speaking, a lot of the ills of the world is as a result of that hate language, the language of violence in religion. But we also recognize that there are some really good imams out there who are trying to do the right thing, but they themselves who are ostracized and who they themselves are sometimes killed. And so then the question is, how do we work with them? How do we empower their voices versus the hate imams? How do we empower and lift up those imams for She to the extent that it is their voice that matters over and above everything else versus the hate? How can then the next picture be, how can we empower the youth? How can we influence the youth to follow these imams for She rather than the hate imams? So that's the next social media campaign, youth campaign that needs to happen. So I'm happy to give a nice recap. In the last few months, we've had quite a few imams knocking down our doors, and we are an American base, but what's been very heartening is we have an association of 26 imams in Burundi who have just signed on, and it's an association called Alliance of Imams that are for humanity. And hopefully in December we're going to be going to Tunis to work with some imams in Tunisia. Now we've focused a lot on Morocco today, but Tunisia is another North African, Middle East North African country that is actually very progressive, and it's unfortunately that it's not their version of Islam that we're actually practicing in much of the Muslim world. So for example, in Tunisia, the law is such that polygamy is completely outlawed. Domestic violence is penalized, and they pursue that. Women can divorce, unlike much of the Muslim countries. According to different interpretations of Sharia law, there are a lot of difficulties for women to divorce their husband. And marriage age is equal, boys as girls. So in this regard, Tunisia is actually very advanced. They've had this set of laws when it comes to Muslim women for several decades already. It's not a new, as in, they have a even more enlightened constitution as a result of post-Ben Ali, that tyrant dictatorship. So I think for Imams for She, what's really important is whether you're a male imam, whether you're a religious leader, for example, in the Morshidads, I had the pleasure of meeting a female Morshida, but we got into a bit of a disagreement in that I was challenging her, what is your position on inheritance in women? And UNFPA can say very, in an expert manner, how the ownership of property, or the lack of, is the root of a lot of the problems of poverty of women in developing countries. And in the context of Islam, so we are a faith-based human rights organization, so everything that we advocate for it comes from the sacred text. So at a minimum, the Quran is very clear that depending on how many siblings you have in the family, the bottom line is girls inherit less than the boys. And within the Islamic context, it's historically is because men provide for the women, provide for their families, the brothers provide for the sisters, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's tradition. The women did not work out of the house, but that's not our social structure now. So a lot of times, for example, like in Morocco I found that 20% of the household, the sole breadwinner are women. And so why are these women not inheriting more? So my challenge for the religious leaders, the Muslim religious leaders, whether you're men, women, is, or what have you, is why do we not rethink, reinterpret the Quran in a way that is just for the society that we live in the 21st century. So that is part of our advocacy work. We want to bring the imams into supporting and promoting gender equality, but then let's go beyond that. How does that gender parity really affect, improve the lives of women and just humanity in general, right? So that's the big picture. Then you've got the issue of gender or women's rights or girls' rights. It's not just the heterosexuals that are involved, because you've got also cases of women and girls who are married because they're lesbians, and so their parents want to marry them off because of that reason, right? So there's this whole violence that happens within the family, and so when the United Nations, the Human Rights Council passes a family resolution institutionalizing a family as the most sacred institution without any ambiguity, we have a problem with that, because that does not reflect the actual real-lived experiences of some families. And the example that Rosa painted, where this girl committed suicide because what happened to her. I think there is a need for imams fashi. We recognize that there needs to be a counterbalance, but what we are really quite amazed is that everybody talks about violence against extremism, the security, women, girls, security, 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 but when it comes to it, where is the money going to? It's going to militarism, and that's this false sense of security. On a micro level, security is, can I go to school? Can I think freely? Can I express myself freely to my parents, to my family, to my community? That is that fundamental that is really lacking in many societies. I think I'm just going to cut it here so that we can have some Q&As. Yep.